For 15 years, I lived and breathed the company my family built. It wasn't just a job, it was my legacy, my identity, the one thing I thought would never betray me. I was 19 when I started working at Brookstone and Harris, our real estate development firm. My uncle, Martin Harris, ran the place like a kingdom. He was charismatic, powerful, the kind of man everyone respected and feared. But me? I was his niece, his protege, his shadow. At least, that's what he always called me. While other people my age were partying in college dorms or finding themselves backpacking through Europe, I was negotiating land deals, attending zoning board meetings, and putting out corporate fires before they even sparked. I earned my place at the table. I stayed late. I worked weekends. I skipped birthdays, anniversaries, even my own engagement party, all in the name of the firm. I thought it would all be worth it, because Martin made one thing very clear. Someday, you'll be sitting in my chair. And I believed him. God, I believed him. He'd tell me in passing, at board dinners, at holiday parties, with that warm smirk and a hand on my shoulder like I was the daughter he never had. My mother, his sister, echoed it too. Your uncle sees himself in you, she'd say. Just keep proving him right. So I did. For 15 years, I sacrificed. Not just time, but pieces of myself. I put every ounce of creativity, intuition, and grit I had into helping grow the firm. When the 2008 crash hit and nearly gutted the company, it was my ideas that kept us afloat. I built client relationships, mentored junior analysts, even rewrote the employee manual from scratch when HR failed to modernize it. I wasn't just part of the machine. I was the engine. So when Martin announced he was stepping down and looking for a new CEO, I already had my acceptance speech written. People in the office were whispering. The board expected it. Even the partners who had once doubted me now nodded with cautious respect when I walked into a room. I remember the morning of the announcement like it was stitched into my bones. It was a Friday. We were in the main conference room. Everyone was there: staff, stakeholders, senior leadership. Martin stood at the head of the table, beaming like a man with a secret too big for his own chest. After careful consideration, he said, I've made a decision about who will take this company into its next chapter. I sat straight, heart pounding, spine aligned like I was already wearing the crown. My son, Jared, will be stepping in as the next CEO. The room didn't erupt into applause. It froze. Jared, his 26-year-old son who'd worked in the firm for less than 2 years, who still asked me how escrow accounts worked, who spent more time golfing than reading reports. I didn't speak. I couldn't. Every sound drained out of the room except for the blood rushing in my ears. I stared at Martin, waiting, hoping for him to laugh and say it was a joke. A test. Some cruel rite of passage I'd passed with flying colors. But he didn't laugh. He clapped Jared on the back, shook his hand, and raised his arm like a prizefighter. He's going to bring fresh energy to Brookstone and Harris, Martin said proudly. A new vision. A bold direction. No one met my eyes. Not a single soul. And that was the moment I realized. It didn't matter how hard I worked. It didn't matter how much I sacrificed. Because in the end, this wasn't about loyalty or legacy. It was about bloodlines, blind favoritism, and betrayal. And if they thought I was going to just swallow that and smile, they didn't know me at all. After the announcement, I did what any self-respecting woman holding back tears in a pencil skirt and 4-inch heels would do. I walked out of that conference room without a word. I didn't cry. Not in the office. Not in the elevator. Not even in my car, though my hand shook so hard I couldn't fit the key in the ignition. I drove. No direction, no plan. Just pavement under tires and rage pulsing in my chest. 15 years gone. Just like that. Not even a thank you. Not even a warning. Eventually, I parked in a grocery store lot and stared at the sky, wondering how I could have been so blind. That's when the idea hit me, or maybe it was instinct. Uncle Scott. The man whose name was barely spoken in our household. The black sheep. The outcast. My mother called him a snake. Martin said he was emotionally unstable, disloyal, poison. But I remembered something else, too. When I was a kid, maybe 7 or 8, Scott had given me a compass. A real one. Brass casing, glass top, heavy in a child's palm. So you never lose your way, he said, kneeling down with a crooked smile. And then, like a magician, he was gone. That was the last time I saw him. Until now. I don't know how I found his office. Some late-night search on an old alumni page, maybe a half-forgotten LinkedIn post. But I showed up at the address 2 days later, unsure if the door would even open. It did. He looked older, of course, grayer, broader. but still had that same spark in his eyes. The moment he saw me, his expression shifted from shock to something softer. Protective. Hesitant. Well, he said, didn't expect to see a Harris around here. I didn't bother with small talk. They gave Jared the CEO position, I blurted. He sighed. Deep, resigned, and opened the door wider. Come in. We sat in a quiet room lined with books and photos. Not the cold, glass-walled power office Martin kept, but something warmer. More human. I expected bitterness. Sarcasm. But Scott just listened. He didn't interrupt. Didn't gloat. And when I finished, when the whole ugly truth spilled out in one breathless monologue, he sat forward and said the last thing I ever expected. Your mother lied to you. I blinked. What? About me? About why I left? About what happened? I froze. Scott reached into a drawer and pulled out a faded photo. Him, my mom, Martin, and a younger version of me, maybe 4 years old, sitting on Scott's shoulders. I didn't leave the family, he said. I was pushed out. Your mother accused me of something I didn't do. Said I made a pass at her. That I was trying to ruin her marriage. I stared at him, heart pounding. And did you? He shook his head. No. She was the one who made the move. I rejected her, and she retaliated. Martin believed her. Maybe he wanted to believe her. He used it to push me out, said it was best for the firm. For the family. My mouth went dry. Everything I thought I knew about my mother, about our family, shattered like thin glass under a single word. Why are you telling me this now? I asked, my voice hoarse. He looked at me with something close to pity. Because you deserve the truth. And because I see the same fire in you that got me cast out. But fire's not a weakness, sweetheart. It's what they're afraid of. Then he stood up, extended a hand, and said, how would you like to burn them back, legally, publicly, and with style? And just like that, I didn't feel alone anymore. The next morning, I walked into Scott's firm, Harrison Equity Group, not as a lost niece looking for closure, but as a woman reborn. The office was smaller, rougher around the edges, and buzzing with an energy I hadn't felt in years. It didn't smell like polished marble or fear. It smelled like ambition. The kind that's raw, scrappy, hungry. Scott didn't offer me a title. He offered me freedom. No politics here, he said. Just results. If you've got ideas, pitch them. If they're good, we act. If they fail, we learn. But we move. I hadn't realized how much I craved that. For years, I'd been tiptoeing through power plays, dodging fragile egos, cushioning male egos with carefully worded emails. And now, for the first time, I could breathe. I wasn't a woman in a man's world here. I was a force. And I had a plan. The first thing I did? I compiled a list of every deal Brookstone and Harris had passed on in the last 5 years. Scott raised an eyebrow. Why those? Because I remember why they passed. Too small. Too messy. Not flashy enough. But I saw the potential in them then, and I know what they're worth now. So we started poaching. Not people, projects. Old developers who'd been overlooked. Single-mother homeowners looking to rebuild on abandoned land. Small-town councils desperate for someone to believe in their plans. We listened. We acted fast. We delivered. In 6 months, our portfolio doubled. In 9, Brookstone and Harris lost 2 major clients, both of whom came to us. Not because we were cheaper, but because we weren't arrogant. Because we didn't send interns to handle million-dollar meetings. Because we cared. But my true revenge? It wasn't financial. It came in the form of a single invitation. An industry gala, black tie, champagne fountains, media coverage. The kind of event where people whisper in corners and pretend to smile at enemies. Brookstone and Harris was sponsoring it, and they had no idea I was coming. I wore red. Not a subtle red. Not a wine-colored power red. A red so bold it stopped conversation when I entered the room. Jared saw me first. His face drained like someone had pulled a plug. Martin followed his gaze and stiffened, gripping his champagne flute like it might save him from drowning. Good evening, I said sweetly. You're not invited, Jared muttered. I'm a guest of the mayor's office, I replied, flashing the silver-embossed pass. They liked my work on the Eastview revitalization. Didn't think Brookstone had the vision to pull it off. Martin opened his mouth, then closed it. I didn't stay long. Just long enough for the cameras to flash. For my name to appear in 6 articles. For the Whisper Network to catch fire with questions like, is she working with Scott? Did she take those clients? Is Brookstone bleeding? I walked out without looking back. because I didn't need them to validate me anymore. I was the storm they pretended didn't exist, and I was only just getting started. Not even a week after the gala, the rumors stopped being whispers, they turned into headlines. Industry blogs ran features about Harrison Equity's meteoric rise. Former clients of Brookstone started reconsidering relationships. My phone buzzed with LinkedIn messages from people who used to avoid me in the break room now asking to grab coffee sometime. But behind the scenes, it was war. Martin had influence, deep roots, friends in zoning committees, former interns in legal departments, connections I once helped him build. And now he was using them, calling in favors, blocking permit approvals, launching audits on every project we touched. Still, I was prepared. What I wasn't prepared for was my mother. It started with a call I almost didn't answer. "We need to talk," she said. No greeting, no warmth. Funny. That's what people usually say before they try to manipulate me. She ignored it. "I saw you at the gala. Do you really think dragging the family name through mud is going to help you?" "You mean your family name? The one that tossed me aside for Jared's LinkedIn resume?" That struck a nerve. But what came next chilled me. "You don't know what you're getting into. Scott is not who you think he is." I laughed. "Really? Because the man you said was a predator gave me more respect in 10 minutes than my entire bloodline managed in 15 years. Silence. Then she dropped the bomb. "You don't understand." I had to say what I said back then. I didn't have a choice. I froze. "What are you talking about?" She exhaled, shaky, guilty. "Scott never touched me. He never made a move." "I did. I made the mistake. And when Martin found out, I panicked. I told him Scott initiated it. It was either that or destroy my marriage. I didn't think they'd cut him off completely. I felt like the ground had tilted. My mother, my own mother, had lied, ruined a man's life, exiled him from his own family, and never told me. "You let me grow up hating him," I whispered. "It wasn't supposed to go this far. But if you align yourself with him now, you're aligning yourself with the scandal. The board will bury you." That's when I realized something brutal. She wasn't here to apologize. She was here to protect her image. Even now, as her daughter's career was under siege, she was worried about optics, about what her bridge club would whisper over Rose. "I'm done protecting your lies," I told her. "You picked your reputation. I'm picking the truth." I hung up, but the fallout came fast. Martin released a statement, carefully worded, dripping with subtle venom. "We are aware of recent rumors surrounding our former employee. Out of respect for family, we've refrained from responding publicly. However, Harrison Equity's recent behavior demonstrates the lack of professionalism we worked hard to correct internally." They didn't name me. They didn't have to. The insinuation was clear. I was unstable, vindictive, dangerous. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, I received a thick manila envelope in my mailbox, no return address. Inside, photos. Me and Scott, walking, laughing, working late, harmless, except framed the wrong way. And there, in bold type, a note clipped on top. "You sure you want to keep playing family?" It wasn't just business now. They were coming for me personally. But they forgot one thing. I had already lost everything once. This time, I knew how to fight. The envelope shook something loose in me, not fear, but fury. They thought they could scare me with shadows and half-truths. They forgot I built their empire. I knew where the cracks were. I went to Scott that evening. His office was dim, the city blinking outside like a nervous heartbeat. I dropped the envelope on his desk without a word. He flipped through the photos, jaw tight, then looked up. "They're trying to start a scandal," he muttered. "Let's give them a real one," I replied. "One they can't spin away." Scott leaned back, narrowed his eyes. "You have something in mind? Remember when Martin shut down the Pine Hollow project 5 years ago?" His eyebrows lifted. "The one with the backdoor rezoning deal?" He claimed it was too risky. I nodded slowly. He didn't shut it down. He transferred it to a shell company, then resold it 6 months later for triple the value under his wife's name. Scott blinked. "You have proof." I kept copies of every internal memo, zoning adjustment, and transfer document. I just never had the guts to use them. Until now. What followed was a week of furious digging, me in my apartment surrounded by manila folders, encrypted USB drives, and old legal pads with my handwriting scrawled in caffeine-fueled shorthand. I'd forgotten how much I knew, how much I'd noticed. Fraudulent transfers, consulting fees to non-existent contractors, inflated appraisals. All of it signed, sealed, and filed neatly away by Martin and his loyal legal lapdogs. But the Pine Hollow deal was the crown jewel, a scandal waiting to burst. We assembled a dossier and handed it to a journalist I trusted, someone Scott once mentored, now working on a deep dive series into real estate corruption. She didn't even blink when she saw the documents. "This is gold," she whispered. "And it's going to burn like hell." 3 weeks later, the article dropped like a bomb. Front page. Title: Family Ties, Dirty Deals, the Scandal Behind Brookstone and Harris. Martin's face, full color and unflattering, glared beside screenshots of contracts, wire transfers, and internal emails with my initials in the CC line. Within 24 hours, city officials launched a probe. 2 clients pulled out. And for the first time in his career, Martin hid. No public statement. No spin. Just silence. But what surprised me most was Jared. He showed up at my building. No warning. Dressed down. No bodyguards or bravado, just panic in his eyes. "You have to stop this," he begged. "You're destroying everything." "Everything you stole?" He flinched. "I didn't know about the Pine Hollow deal." "I swear." "Then why didn't you ask?" I shot back. "You were too busy golfing your way to CEO." He shook his head, swallowed hard. "I'm not my dad." "Then prove it," I said. "Testify." He stared at me. I could see the war playing out behind his eyes, loyalty versus truth, comfort versus integrity. "If you don't," I added quietly, "they'll throw you under the bus. Just like they did with Scott. Just like they did with me." He didn't answer. But he didn't say no either. The subpoena arrived on a Wednesday morning. It was addressed to Elaine Harris, my mother. She once held herself like a queen. Every movement calculated, every glance dripping with cold composure. But now? She looked like a porcelain vase with a hairline fracture. Still upright. Still beautiful. But the next tremor would shatter her. She called me, of course. "You did this," she hissed. "You dragged me into your war." "No, Mom," I said calmly. "You put yourself in it when you lied about Scott. When you covered for Martin's schemes. When you let me believe family meant obedience." Silence. "They're calling me in as a witness." "No, they're not," I corrected. "They're calling you in as a participant. The zoning committee flagged your signature on 3 separate transfer forms." That shut her up. Her voice trembled next. "This will ruin me." I let the words hang there, because I wasn't going to rescue her from them. I remembered the girl I used to be, so desperate for approval, for her touch, for a sliver of affection. That girl used to bring home awards just to earn a nod. She used to swallow disappointment like medicine and call it being strong. That girl was gone. Court day came, and the room was packed. Media, attorneys, city officials, all waiting for the testimony that would either seal the deal or blow it wide open. Scott and I sat quietly, side by side. Then Jared walked in. He wasn't with Martin. In fact, Martin was absent. Rumor had it he was hiding out in his lake house in Vermont, avoiding reporters and legal teams like a ghost. Jared adjusted his tie, glanced toward me. "I'm here to testify," he said firmly. "On behalf of the city. And against my father." Gasps. Actual gasps. The air shifted. My mother was next. She walked slowly to the stand, not in heels this time, but modest flats. No jewelry. No silk scarf. Her eyes darted around like a hunted animal. When the prosecution asked about her role in the Pine Hollow transfer, she crumbled faster than anyone expected. "I didn't know what I was signing," she stammered. "Martin said it was a gift. For estate purposes." And yet, the prosecutor said, "You received a wire transfer for $350,000 2 weeks later." Her mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. Then she whispered the one word that haunted me more than I expected. "Yes." They pressed further. About the accusations against Scott. About the lie that tore our family apart. I waited, breath held, as the lawyer asked, "Mrs. Harris, is it true that the allegations you made against your brother-in-law were fabricated?" She didn't look at me. Not once. But her voice broke. "Yes. I lied. I was afraid. I thought if Martin ever knew if he knew I was the one who, he would leave me." Scott sat still beside me, arms folded, face unreadable. And I felt hollow. Not victorious. Not vindicated. Just empty. Because even in the face of perjury, corruption, and public disgrace, my mother's motive had never changed. She lied to protect a man who never loved her the way she wanted. And she sacrificed me, and Scott, in the process. But that was her choice. And now, she would answer for it. The verdict came swift and sharp. Martin Harris, disbarred. Fined. Under criminal investigation. Elaine Harris, indicted for perjury and fraud. Released on house arrest pending trial. Brookstone and Harris, delisted from the National Registry of Real Estate Consortiums. Multiple clients pulled out. Stocks nosedived. The name was radioactive. Jared? He handed in his resignation. Publicly, with a statement that acknowledged the firm's failings and his role in enabling them. It was cleaner than I expected, but maybe that was the best he could offer. Scott and I stood outside the courthouse steps that day. A sea of reporters buzzed like flies just beyond the rope line, waiting for a quote, a breakdown, a victory dance. "You sure you want to say something?" he asked. I nodded. My heels clicked across the marble like punctuation as I stepped to the podium. "This isn't just a story about corruption," I began. "It's a story about trust, how easily it can be weaponized, and how long it takes to rebuild once it's broken." Cameras flashed. Someone shouted a question about my mother. Another about Martin. Another about revenge. I paused, then said the truth. Sometimes justice doesn't feel like triumph. Sometimes it feels like standing in the wreckage of everything you thought was solid and realizing you were always standing on sand. I didn't cry. Not then. I'd done enough of that behind closed doors. Scott and I left through the back exit, away from the noise. We sat in his car in silence for a long while, the air between us thick with history, pain, and something new, peace. "You could take everything now," he said eventually. "Brookstone's bones, the Harris estate, the patents, the shares. They're all yours to burn." I looked out the window, watched two teenagers laughing at a food truck. "I don't want their ashes," I said. "I want something that's mine. Something real." He nodded slowly. "Then let's build it." And we did. Over the next year, Harrison Equity became more than a company. It became a movement, a place where voices like mine, once silenced by family politics and boardroom bias, could lead. We started programs for young women in finance. We launched integrity-first development projects in neglected communities. We made profit, plenty of it, but never at the expense of ethics. As for Martin, he vanished from public life. The lake house became his prison. Rumor had it he was trying to strike a deal to protect what was left of his fortune. I didn't care. And my mother? She wrote me one letter. Long, rambling. Apologetic. I didn't respond. Not out of spite, but because I didn't owe her my healing. That was my work, and I was doing it. A year later, I stood at the same spot on the Harrison Equity rooftop where I once promised myself I'd never be silent again. The skyline glittered like broken promises turned into diamonds, and I wasn't the same woman who walked into this city hoping for her family's approval. I had become something else, something freer. Our firm was thriving. We had just signed a landmark partnership with a nonprofit housing initiative, one of my passion projects. And as I gave a tour to a group of new interns, I realized I didn't see fear in their eyes when they looked at me. I saw hope. They didn't know my history. They knew my work. They didn't see a niece scorned. They saw a leader. Later that evening, Scott joined me on the rooftop with 2 paper cups of coffee, the cheap, diner kind we both secretly liked more than espresso. "You thinking about the past?" he asked. "A little," I admitted. "But it doesn't feel heavy anymore. Just distant." He nodded. "Funny how truth doesn't set you free right away. First, it breaks you. Then it reshapes you." We sipped in silence. I thought about everything we had lost, and how much more we had gained. And then I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I called my sister. We weren't close. Not yet. But Jared had sent me a message weeks ago. Not an apology, just an update. He had started working at a startup in Colorado. Something sustainable. He even mentioned therapy. That alone meant something. When my sister answered, her voice was quiet. "Hi." "Hey," I said. "I don't want to talk about the past. I just wanted to say, I'm not angry anymore." "Okay," she said. "Neither am I." That was enough. I didn't need a full-circle reunion. I didn't need tears or hugs or viral redemption stories. I just needed to know that I hadn't become them, that I could break the cycle and still stand. That night, I went home to the apartment I'd bought myself. I looked around at the photos of my projects, the friends I'd chosen, the walls I'd painted myself, and I finally saw it. This wasn't a life I reclaimed. It was a life I created, on my own terms, with my own rules. And this time, I was the one writing the legacy. Not for approval, not for inheritance, but for the next girl who grows up in a family that tries to silence her and one day realizes her voice is her greatest weapon.